Okay, it's 12 CET. We're still waiting for one speaker. But let's get started. And meanwhile, we can still wait for him. So apologize for the delay. Good morning and good afternoon and good evening to everyone joining us from different parts of the world. My name is Fanny and I'm ISOCAP member. I'm an urban planner from UN Habitat. I'm delighted to serve as the moderator for today's 1.5 hour session. We are very honored to have our president with us today, Ms. Elizabeth Bepler. And on behalf of UN, ISOCAP and also YPP, it's my great pleasure to warmly welcome you to this session, celebrating 35 years of ISOCAP YPP. First, allow me to take the opportunity to provide a brief background of the YPP program. The YPP program is a flagship initiative of ISOCAP designed to empower early career planners through international workshops, collaborative learning, and hands-on engagement with real-world challenges. Each year, the YPP workshop is held in a different city at the same venue as the ISOCAP Congress and takes place prior to the ISOCAP Congress. Each YPP workshop is designed to address site-specific urban challenges with participants selected through an open call. This format offers participants a unique opportunity to engage directly with local context while contributing to innovative planning solutions. The YPP program plays a vital role in supporting the next generation of planners, creating a platform for exchange, collaboration, and innovation across regions and disciplines. On a personal note, I'm also delighted to be part of this journey. My first YPP experience was in 2007 in Istanbul, which makes this moment especially meaningful. As we mark this important milestone, we also look ahead, reflecting on how planning must evolve to respond to one of the most urgent challenges of our time. Today's theme, climate change and the future of cities, invites us to explore not only the risks cities face, but also the transformative opportunities they hold. We are honored to have the distinguished speakers who bring diverse global experience and insights into urban transformation. Before we move further to today's program, it's my great honor to invite the president of ISOCAP, Elizabeth Bepler, to deliver her opening remarks on this special occasion celebrating 35 years of the YPP program. Elizabeth, over to you.
Thank you, Lee. And thank you very much. And beautifully said, you are already embracing what YPP is all about. So, distinguished colleagues, speakers, young professionals, and friends from across the globe, good morning, midday, afternoon, and thank you so much for taking the time, waking up early or staying awake for this start of the celebration of the 35th anniversary of our Young Planners Professional Program. It's both a honor and a privilege to welcome you today, young planning professionals and former young planning professionals or interested in the YPPs, as we celebrate 35 years of this program. It's actually a remarkable milestone in the journey of ISOCARP. And 35 is not just a number. It represents, yes, 3.5 decades of ideas, innovation, mentorship, transformation. It reflects a sustained commitment to nurturing the next generation of planners, those who do not just inherit our cities, but actually actively shaping the future. And today is, I think we all agree on that, maybe more important than ever to do so. So the topic on climate change and the future of cities could not be more really urgent or more relevant. We are living in this defining moment with cities across the world facing unprecedented crises and pressures from rising temperatures, sea levels, inequality, rapid urbanization, biodiversity loss, and resource constraints. But of course, in these challenges, we think there is a powerful opportunity to rethink how we plan, to rethink or reimagine how we design, and the opportunity to redefine who gets to shape the cities and what can we do more or better to make that happen. And this is also where the Young Planning Professional Program has stood out. For 35 years, it was more than a program, a platform for courage, creativity, and collaboration. And it has given young planners a seat at the table, a voice in global conversations, and you will hear this across this and the coming webinars, and also the confidence to challenge conventional thinking. There was a lot of firsts and life-changing stories, and that's actually the impact we want to have too in your own professional lives. So many of today's leaders in planning, they once stood where our young professionals stand today. Curious, ambitious, and really ready to make a difference. It has been an instrumental program in bridging that journey from potential to impact. And as we reflect and we celebrate this milestone, we also must look ahead. The future of cities will not be shaped by one discipline, one generation, or one geography. It will be shaped by collective intelligence, by planners who can work across sectors, who understand complexity, and who are not afraid to innovate and to challenge and to bring some more radical thinking to where we need to be in the future. So, to our young professionals joining us today, you're not just the future of planning, you're already active agents of change, and your ideas matters, your perspectives matter, and your leadership is needed more than ever. To our distinguished speakers and partners, because we also partner with this program, thank you for contributing your knowledge, your time, and your passion to this very important conversation. And I think I spoke too long, so I'm very keen to hand over back to the speakers and to hear from all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth, for your inspiring remarks. As you said, young planners matter. And thank you for your continued leadership to the ISACOP community and the Young Planning Professionals Program Network. Thank you. With your permission, we will now continue with our program and move to the introduction of our speakers. I have Baha with us now. So it's my great pleasure to introduce our speakers today. We have three speakers. First is Dr. Edmore Muta. Welcome, Dr. Edmore Muta. His work focuses on climate governance, urban resilience, and inclusive development. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Edmore Muta. And the second speaker, Dr. Mehreen Mohabi. He is expert in sustainable urbanism and climate responsive planning practice. Welcome, Dr. Mehreen Mohabi. And the third speaker is Dr. Bahabo Kafoni. He will bring us deep insights into urban systems, policy, and innovation in planning. Welcome, Dr. Bahabo Kafoni. So, and later in the session, we'll hear reflections from Professor Hope Magdimisha Shipogo, Director of the YPP program. Thank you for joining us. You are all welcome. With your permission.
Thank you, Lee. I'm not sure whether you got Dr. Mabaham here as yet, because yeah, but I know you do have your two speakers.
Oh, okay. So if Dr.
But she can confirm if she's online.
Okay, if he's not with us today, and for the moment, he can join later in the later discussion.
Yes. Yeah, let's proceed.
Yeah, with your permission, we will now move into the discussion around 4 key questions. I will invite each presenter to respond, starting with Edmore, followed by Mehreen. So if Baha is with us, he can join later if he's not yet online. After the discussion, we will have a Q&A session. We start with the first question. Our first question explores the connection between global frameworks and local realities. The question is, in your experience, how are cities translating climate responsive planning from global ambition into tangible action. Where do you observe the wide gap between international frameworks such as the New Urban Agenda and the Sustainable Development Goals and implementation on the ground? So it's from global vision to local delivery. Let's start with Edmore. May I invite you to begin?
All right. Thank you, Program Director, and good morning. Sorry, it's good afternoon from my side. Good morning to everyone. Yeah, just to answer your question, there is a gradual adaptation of global frameworks as far as climate change and adaptation, but it has been uneven, particularly from the global south, cities in the global south. So when you read, mostly you see this in the policy documents, that there is actually an appreciation of the global framework, but the implementation side is still lagging for a variety of reasons. One of it being maybe financing, like climate funding. So most of the cities in the global south, they lack funding. So it's actually very difficult to actually implement some of these global framework, as much as they've been adopted in their policy frameworks. Another issue is is the sophistication of them, right? As we know, planning or physical planning normally happens at a local level. So what you find is that contextualizing some of these global frameworks has been a challenge in some cities, as much as you find it in the document, but the sort of trying to contextualize it to the local community or to the local environment has been a challenge. So this is where you find some gaps between global framework and the local context. Another thing which I would want to add as well, as far as the gaps which are there, is issues to do with equity and informality. I don't know much about the global north, but in reading, I think there's still issues of informality or informal settlements, so to say. This is where you find the most vulnerable people. I mean, they're vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. So what you find in informality is that in informal settlements per se is that in most cases informality is being treated as a problem, and actually the majority, the majority, above 50% of the cities, 50% of the population in the global south cities, they actually live in formal settlement, but their voice is not actually heard in as far as urban planning is concerned. There's no mainstreaming of informality into the urban planning, as much as they talk about it, but this is a challenge. There's no integration between voices from the informal settlements to the mainstream urban planning. So this has been a challenge as well. But in short, there has been an adoption, or there is a gradual adoption of these global frameworks, but there's the application of them on the ground is still uneven. That's what I can say for now. Thank you, Program Director. You're still muted.
Thank you, Edmore. You mentioned the financial gap in implementation, the planning gap at the local level, and also inequality and informality to integrate voice from informal communities. So that's the challenges we have observed from the global south. Thank you for your insights. Is there any immediate question to add more? If not, let's move to Dr. McGreen.
Lee, I would have loved to know which YPP he attended.
Oh,
If he has been part of any of the YPPs.
YPP, yes. Maybe you can talk a little about your YPP experience. I mean, which year were you at YPP or any other experience related to YPP?
okay, sorry, I didn't introduce myself. Maybe I just trying to save time, but it's fine. I am a former YPP, of course. My first YPP was in 2016. The first one to happen in Africa, which happened in Durban. So I was there, participated in that one. And then the second YPP was in Poland, 2023 in Gdańsk. So that's another one which I participated in. So yeah, I enjoy it. It's very it was very enriching. You know, I learned a lot, obviously, from from other YPPs from different backgrounds, where architects, civil engineers who were also part of that program. And I think the 2016 one as well, I think it's still the same. I was a bit younger then, but I think I developed an interest. We get to know also how planning, how planning is being done in other countries, and also learn from that. And you can also share your ideas from it. So you can also get, for those who are in academia, you can also get ideas to actually further your research. You can find topics from this as you go. So there is actually a lot you can gain from being or from participating in the YPP program. There's actually a lot than what I can say at the moment. But yeah, I've been involved in two YPP programs, and it is my pleasure to be here celebrating the 35th anniversary of YPP program. It's quite an honor. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Edmore, and thank you, Hope, for that intervention. So since you have mentioned your observation in the Global South, and you have joined the two YPPs, one is in Durban, one is in Gdańsk in Poland, one is in the South, one in the Global North. So from your two different experience of YPP, can you compare a little bit, and you have some different experience from those two YPP workshops?
Well, I will be biased, but yeah, I will be biased to say, obviously the one in my city in Durban was, was, of course, it was the first one. And yeah, I sort of learned a lot, and I didn't know what to expect, but it was sort of quite enriching. The second one, of course, I knew what to expect and what to do. So nothing really new. But what I found, is the issue of context, which you always, talk about. The different challenges, every city has its own challenges, or depending on the, development level of that country or that city, if I can say that. So there are different challenges, but what I found also is that we are almost facing the same problem, but in a different context.
Thank you. Thank you for your insights. And let's move to the second speaker, Dr.
This is you. Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
All right.
Let's move to the second speaker, Dr. Mahrin. For the first question, from global vision to local delivery, may I invite Dr. Mahrin to respond? First, maybe you can also introduce yourself and your YPP experience, and then we can get the insights.
Dr. Lee, we have Baha. I think it's 3 a.m. for her.
Oh, okay.
Baha, yes.
Welcome to join Baha. Thank you for joining us in unpleasant time from your side. But let's first move to speaker Dr. Mahrin. Are you with us?
No, she's not here. We have Baha instead. She's not here.
Okay.
She's the one who's
Okay.
struggling with time.
Okay.
Yes.
Apologize. So, welcome Baha, and may I invite Baha to respond to this question. First, you can introduce yourself, especially your YPP experience, and then you can respond to the first question from global vision to local delivery. Thank you.
Sure, sure. So first of all, good afternoon. It's a great honor and pleasure to be with you here. I always introduce myself as an isocarpian, as a young isocarpian in a way. I have to tell a bit of my experience as a YPP. I began in a very unpleasant time, which was in the beginning of COVID. It was 2020, which was Doha basically, and then we moved to 2021 and I got to meet all these wonderful people that open my I always say that isocarp open a window for me to the world, not just as an academic or as a professional, but also as a human being. So I was managed actually to make friends all over the world. And today Admor with us, who I met actually a lot of many of you in here, Lifan last year in Bolzano, Elizabeth, and all of you actually, which is part of my family. Again, it was for me kind of really, really very one of the most, I think, beautiful thing that happened to me as academic, again, as a researcher, is to be engaged in this community because I have learned a lot. I have actually been involved in a different context with a different culture, with a different backgrounds. And this, I think it was really, really one of the most beautiful things that happened to me out of my institution, out of academia, out of my university. So this is a small story about my involvement with Isocarp. I actually once asked my grandpa. I told him what would be the most beautiful thing before he passed away. What would be the most beautiful thing that could happen to a human being? And he answered me shortly. He said, "Try to make friend in every different place, and try to be a good friend, and try to work together to make this world a bit more beautiful." And after actually 10, 15 years, I try to find these insights in Isocarp, and I begin to feel that I really belong to this community. I don't want to expand very much on that, but I'm really emotional and I'm really happy and glad to be part of this community. And it's an honor to join the 35 years of celebration of Isocarp. But moving to the question, I'm Lebanese. I don't like very much the word that I'm based in the global south or I'm based in the global north, because I do feel very much this binaries between south and north. But I would say I'm located more into the north. But I'm from Lebanon, so I have a bit of optimism in here by answering the question, because we've seen actually a lot of good insight, good involvement in terms of the climate change responses into specifically into planning. So I would say as a specialist that there is a majority of cities around the globe. They are increasingly actually translating the climate responsive planning from this global ambitions into tangible local actions. So basically, this is occurring by embedding the climate thinking in everyday planning system, design practices, and government structure. So since the adaptation of the framework, such as you mentioned, as we are speaking actually into this global framework or agenda, specifically as a new urban agenda or sustainable development goal, particularly the SDG 11, there has been actually a strong global vision for cities that are inclusive, resilient, and sustainable. In a way, in practice, this global agenda is being carried out through several career pathways. And first, I could speak about this global commitment, such as, for instance, the Paris Agreement, 1.5 degrees Celsius target, are now being translated honestly into a city level climate action plan, or through network like C40 cities, as you basically all know as a planner, or the Covenant of Mayors, such as the city of Paris, city of London, New York. So all these cities are setting carbon neutrality target and implementing building retrofitting or basically decarbonization programs. So I can say that we see a shift in how cities are act actually physically through integrated infrastructure rather than relying on this conventional gray system. Some examples here we could speak about a city like Rotterdam, Copenhagen, and then we see that these cities that are investing actually heavily in blue-green infrastructure, combining this water system, parks, public spaces, to manage basically floods and heats. And this is the impact of climate change, as we all know. Also, cities from the east, I could say, like, for example, cities like Singapore are embedding this natural-based solution, or in China as well, into a dense urban environment as a core planning strategy. So not just as an aesthetic layer, but this is a very efficient approach, in my opinion, as a professional. We could also speak about as the climate action as increasingly actually embedded into the governance structure, which is very crucial aspect in my opinion as a young planner. So cities as like we can say cities as Barcelona are integrating the heat resilience and mobility planning at district scale, while we could say also that Paris is kind of reshaping its streets hierarchy to prioritize this pedestrian cycling as a part of climate strategy. So this, I could say that this show a shift from this isolated projects to a systemic urban transformation. However, I will build a bit on what my colleague just began in the beginning to speak about these gaps. Here I would add a bit, despite these programs, we still have a gaps into the global ambitions. So these gaps is happening, in my opinion, at the implementation level. So from my experience as I'm working with Beirut local authorities, we found basically the major majority or the major gaps in here is the financing and institutional capacity. And this was really an obstacle. So while the global framework are very ambitious, they're not always matching with sufficient funding mechanism or technical capacity at local level. So particularly this is happening in urbanizing cities, as Edward actually mentioned in the beginning. So the second gap is, in my opinion, is this localization issue. So many strategies are still transformed into a top-down approach without enough adaptation to specific social, culture, and environmental context. So without taking in mind or attention to this very crucial aspect into the implementation processes. So this raises a key question for me to what extent can this global planning models truly work without deep contextual grounding? So this is a very crucial question that we have to ask ourselves as a planner located in a specific geographical location, and we need actually to act to make impact on that issues. So while actually also the SDG 11 provide this comprehensive vision, it's often lack this strong enforcement and implementation mechanism. So as a result, many of these targeted actually remain aspirational rather than operational. Local scale, or for example, we see this clear transition from a global framework and agreement to regional network, and finally to a neighborhood scale intervention. So I could say that this critical challenge remains ensuring that this translation from a vision to implementation is not only technical, but also adequately fundable. It is a context-sensitive approach. And I think one of the most important also aspect is to respond to social justice. So I would end in here, and I would be happy if anybody would ask a question or contribute to my contribution.
Thank you, Bahar. Thank you for your insights. And you point out there's a shift through integrated infrastructure and also in different cities in Europe as well as in Asian countries, these blue-green infrastructure nature-based solutions. Despite those gaps, there is a localization strategy and financial gaps in financial and institution capacity need to be strengthened. And to following that line, I would like to bring at UN Habitat, there is a program called SDG localization. That's exactly what we have been working on. To translate global frameworks into local agenda to integrate different efforts, different sectors to work on the local context to bring global framework into local action. Thank you for your insights. Before we move to the second question, I would like to suggest that we make a group picture. I invite everyone to turn on your camera. And I ask our technician or our facilitator to take a screenshot for all the participants.
Of course, if everyone turns their cameras on and gives us big smiles, we will.
So Shifra, let us know if we are done with the photo.
Yes, I've taken many. Are there anyone who still wants to put their cameras on and join the picture?
Okay, thank you, Shifra.
You're welcome.
Yeah, let's move to the second question. We now turn to practice. The question is around grounded practice and lessons learned. Can you reflect on a project or initiative you have been involved in that has advanced urban climate resilience or sustainability? What contributed to its success and what barriers were most challenging? Dr. Edmore, please go ahead.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, I would like to talk about actually an ongoing project which I'm involved in. So in the city where I reside, it's a coastal city, the city of Durban in South Africa. We've been receiving recurring flooding events. So with that, as I mentioned before, a big number of our population actually reside in formal settlements. And with that, also, what you find is that they've been affected, year after year. So I'm working on a project which is actually, which is actually in formal settlements, where, we're trying to find solutions, or ways in which these people, they can actually avoid disaster, right, from flooding. What I found to be very effective, still in the initial stage, but it's actually community participation. As you move in community participation, you realize that it makes it easier. People are more involved if they are more involved in that project, if they are part of it, or if they feel like they are part of it, which is what you call maybe co-production. So they need to be empowered to be part of this project or solutions to their problem, as opposed to the top-down approach, as my colleague Baha just mentioned. So a move away from this approach, the top-down approach, to the bottom-up approach, is actually very effective. And also we have been in touch with with the government, because I'm coming from the academia side. So, cross-sectoral, approach where you involve everyone, like in, town planners, architects, engineers. So this is actually very important, to put all hands on the deck to solve this challenge, because it's not just a planning problem or environmental problem, but involves like everyone, including including the society. So the most important thing is actually the community involvement of the community. And I must say also the issue of data. In informal settlements, what you find that, no one really knows the number of people who reside in this informal settlement, right? So when you plan, you need to have a number, of people like who you are planning for. So if you don't have a number, if you don't have data, then it becomes a challenge, because you're going to repeat the same problem. Some people still they won't be accounted for. So it's very important to work with the community and actually document these people who are in most cases undocumented in this community, so that you actually your plan is actually in sync with the population which you are trying to assist, right? So data is main issue, especially when you're dealing with informal settlements in issues of flooding, because this is where I'm currently focusing on. So it's quite important, and also integration of technology. I think while I'm still on that point of data, you find that it's very difficult to get a sense of the environment. So you can also use technology, satellite technology, to get a sense of the the space in which you're working on, before you move into design, and then you can now bring this your expert knowledge to these communities. Okay, this is what you have. This is the area you are living in. If a flood, if there is a flood, you will be impacted. They get a sense of what what you are talking about, because in most cases we plan, or we write these frameworks in our offices, but it is important to sort of to involve the communities. Use of technology, as I mentioned, visualization, so that the community, even those who do not have the same expertise as you, they'll get an idea, an understanding of of how to deal with the solution, and also bring in their indigenous knowledge, because these people are not just receivers of information or solutions. They actually participate. They've been living in these communities for a very long time, and they have knowledge from this community. So it is important to integrate your expert knowledge as well as the indigenous knowledge or the community knowledge. So there's need for that integration. So that's what I found to be very effective, and for some of the projects which I'm working on. And if you are on the same page from the beginning, actually, I'm sure you can literally see a light, sort of light at the end of the tunnel, if I can put it that way. So yeah, that's what I can say for the moment. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Edmore. Thank you for your for bringing experience in successful implementation projects. If I can summarize, you point out that the first thing is to engage communities to solve problems together, and the second is to bring data on the forefront, to the importance of data in planning, in management, in design, and as well as the integration of technology. And the third is leveraging the indigenous knowledge to solve problems. Thank you for bringing those experience from the ground. If there is any immediate question, if not, we will move to the speaker, Dr. Baha, to the second question, grounded practice and lessons learned. So may I invite Baha to respond?
I think there is a question for Admer.
Sorry?
And there is a question for Admer,
There is a question?
I believe.
Oh, okay. So I see our president Elizabeth raised her hand. Do you have a question? Please speak.
Yes, maybe it's not so much of a question, but I think really an important point here is the whole informal settlements, because there's about 1 billion people living in informal settlements. And Edmore made that point twice. So it's important for us as an organization too to get a lot of information and experience from the ground in that area, because it concerns a lot of a high portion of the world population, and especially because in Africa the population will grow most over the coming decades. And let's hope that the percentage of informal settlements goes down, but the actual number will still go up. So thank you for raising this.
Thank you, Elizabeth, for your comments on informal settlements. That's also one of the strategic working areas of UN Habitat in the next years. Thank you for pointing that out. If there is no other comments or questions, let's move the second speaker.
There's
Dr.
a question
Baha.
on the chat.
Oh, okay.
From Vidya.
Oh, thank you. So, Vidya, the question is, are any of the projects you mentioned available for us to look up and read more about online? So, add more.
Oh, okay. As I mentioned, this is an ongoing project, but as soon as we are done, so there is a publication aspect of it where we're actually documenting and publish some of these results from credible journals or publishing houses. So, and what we do as well, we actually share on our website. So I'm from Inclusive City, Search for Inclusive Cities, University of KwaZulu-Natal. So we normally publish some of these results on our platforms. So it will be public information for everyone to just consume and maybe apply it in your context and share these ideas. So we do publish every now and then. So it's if you just check in Inclusive Cities. So we do publish, just to answer your question. Yeah, you can find it online, even on the website. I mean, yeah.
Thank you, Edmore. And now we move to Dr. Baha. Over to you.
All right. So basically, I will be reflecting on an initiative, an experience, which is actually, I think it is very relevant for the question, which is I had the pleasure to be involved as I contributed as a researcher to the publication, which we succeed this year with the publication, which is Isocarb at 60. It's a legacy of planning impact. So this was developed for the Isocarb Diamond Jubilee in 2025, and it was presented in Riyadh Congress in Saudi Arabia the last year, December. So I would like to reflect in that initiative because for me it was very important for you to share what I have learned through this experience, as I contributed very actively to a chapter which was actually collecting and synthesizing voices from urban thinkers across the world. So my role involved actually conducting and analyzing interviews with senior planners, which focusing on how urban planning has evolved in response to a global framework such as the New Urban Agenda, Sustainable Development Goal, particularly the SDG 11, as we discussed previously, and how these agendas translated into real planning practice across different contexts. And this was 11 to 15 actually interviews that I conducted, and I would like to share with you some of the insights. And I also encourage you to get the book, which is available on our website, and then you can explore further initiative that we took in the publication. So from grounded practice actually perspective, so this initiative initiate kind of advanced sustainability and resilience in an indirect but important way. So it actually helped us to understand how to translate this or how this global agendas or urban agendas are actually translated into an experimental knowledge and practice-based reflection. So by structuring these interviews around the real implementation questions, basically, so how planning has changed since the 2016, how global framework influence daily practice, and how professional network like ISOCARP shape planning culture. So we were able to move beyond this theory, beyond this kind of huge ambitions, and capture how the climate and sustainability goals are actually interrupted into the ground. So a key condition that made this work effective, it was actually the comparative and the cross-regional perspective. So by bringing together this planners from different institutions, cultural, governmental context, it allow us to identify this kind of patterns. So despite these different realities, we found that there is successful climate responsive planning consistently depend on this contextual adaptation, depend on the institutional continuity, and basically the ability of the planner to translate this global framework into the local action. So, and another important factor was this role of the knowledge exchange within the professional network. So, where these dialogues between generation, as the president, Mrs. Elizabeth said, of planner, this created kind of space for reflection on both the long-term planning evolution and the current implementation changes. However, several barriers became evident through this process for me and also for the researchers that I was working with. So the most significant is this persistent gap. So between, again, there were a gap, and the understanding of the gap between the planning framework as a global framework and the global implementation. While these global agendas actually provide a very strong direction, their translation into the practice is often very limited to this institutional fragmentation, to the lack of the resources in that specific geographical context, and of course for the political discontinuity. A second barrier that appeared for us is the difficulty of applying knowledge. So, meaning that even when strong planning principles exist, they are not always effective when it is embedded into the planning system or to the decision-making process, specifically again in this local context, local level. So I think overall this experience taught me, and then what I explored through this all the process, that advancing the urban climate resilience is not only about designing these physical interventions, having these huge ambitions, but also about this building the knowledge, is the institutional understanding, is the cross a scalar transition mechanism that allow this global sustainability goals to become real planning action on ground. So with that, I would close to this answer to the question. Thank you.
Thank you, Bahar. Thank you for pointing out the importance of knowledge transfer. This echoed the slogan of ISOCAP, or actually this reminded me of the slogan of ISOCAP, knowledge for better cities. So we have Diamond publication ISOCAP 60. In a series of interview done by Bahar, we can find many answers to our questions today, from global vision to local implementation and the learning from practice. So let's after this webinar, we can turn to our ISOCAP Diamond publication. I believe there are many insights and intelligence and knowledge there for us to refer to. Thank you, Baha.
Thank you.
Is there any immediate question? If not, we will move to the third question, from inclusion to co-creation. This has been covered by Edmore already a little bit, community participation, but let's go deeper into the participation. The question is, communities most exposed to climate risks are often positioned as recipients rather than partners. How can planning move towards genuine co-creation? What does sustained, meaningful engagement look like in practice? Dr. Edmore, over to you.
Okay. Thank you so much. Okay, as you mentioned, I think I touched a little bit on the participation, but it is very important for co-creation. The other thing is actually the capacity. As I mentioned, some of these global frameworks, the issue with implementing some of this global framework is, financial lack of climate funding or financial capacity, institutional capacity as well. So it is quite important to maybe fund some of the local organizations, because in my case, these communities which you are working in, as much as they are informal, or we call them informal settlements, you would find that they're actually very much organized. They have structures within these communities. So, but then what they lack is the technical capacity, as well as fiscal capacity or financial capacity. So it is important that the finances reach these organizations, right? So that's quite it's quite important to partner with this organization to carry on, or to sort of move forward the work which they've been doing in some of their communities. So it is a very important aspect when you are talking about co-creation as concerned, and also building long-term relationship, like through trust. All right, you don't go there as an expert, as if you know everything and you want to give solutions. They know nothing. So you need to build trust within within these communities, so as to actually co-create, or co-produce the community, or to reach the desired outcomes as you move forward. So that is actually important as well, building long-term relationship and trust with communities. It's also very important to actually, when you bring in sort of your expert knowledge, you need to put it in a language which they understand, because you are an expert. And then there is this global framework. We're talking about Sustainable Development Goal 11, sustainable cities and communities. What does it mean? Right? We're talking about Sustainable Development Goal number 13, climate action, right? What does it mean, on the ground? These people don't have this knowledge. So you need to break it down as, as planners or as experts. You need to break down some of these frameworks in language which they understand. And then now you sort of integrate with the knowledge from the ground. Then, you sort of reach common grounds to solve the problem, or to tackle some of these challenges, which which might be in these communities. So that's I think these are some of the the areas which need to be looked at as far as co-creation is concerned. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Edmore. Thank you for bringing forward perspective, partnership between communities and financial institutions, and building a long-term relationship, building trust, and using understandable language to local communities, as well as integrate knowledge from the ground. Thank you. Let's now move to Dr. Baha, responding to this question. Dr. Baha.
Right. Well, I think most of the things that I will be saying, it's kind of covered by Admir a bit, but I will try to delve a bit more into my experience, how I see also the topic. So I believe that moving from inclusion to a genuine co-creation require a shift in how planning actually understand communities. So the understanding of communities, it is actually not as beneficiaries of planning decision, but as an active partners in shaping them. So this is especially critical in area most exposed to climate risk, where people already actually develop everyday strategies to adapt to the environmental and to the infrastructural challenges. So in practice, one of the key conditions from moving toward the co-creation is the early and the continuous engagement. And this is how I see it. So communities should not be involved only at the consultation stage, as mostly is happening, but from the very beginning, starting from defining the problem, defining priorities, and shaping actually the possible responses. So this changed the role of planning from delivering solutions to facilitate actually a shared process of decision making. So this is one thing, but a second important approach is the use of the accessible and the participatory tools as well. So when methods such as planning, spatial storytelling, or climate risk discussions are translated into a simple visual and collaborative forms that allows, actually, as Admor said, that allows the communities to actively shape the knowledge rather than simply respond to it. So I think this is also help in bridging the gap between the technical expertise and the life experience of specific community. Another point that I could highlight is this essential element in the recognition of the local and the informal knowledge system, because this is a very crucial element. So in many climate vulnerable contexts, residents or the community that is living in that geographical location, they already understand how to deal with problems. They know how to deal with floods, they know how to deal with the heat stress, they know how to deal with the lack of infrastructure through everyday practices that they actually develop through decades. So these forms of knowledge are often very overlooked, in my opinion, that I actually conduct also workshops for communities, for vulnerable communities. But they are crucial for designing this realistic and resilient urban strategies. So, however, I would say that sustaining meaningful engagement remain a major challenge. So many participatory process, as I said, it's still kind of project based and time limited. Often, like it is ending once a planning phase of planning phase or the funding cycle is completed. So the project is kind of cut it and we are over, we are done. But this is not actually the reality. So I would say there is also a deeper structural barrier that is related to the power and decision making as well. So even when this participation exists in a specific place, specific institutional system, organization, so the final decisions often remain centralized within institutions or expert group. So I think that without shifting from level of decision making power to co-creation risk, is becoming actually symbolic rather than transformative. So finally, I would say that genuine co-creation require more than participation methods. It requires a redefinition of planners' role from being a solo decision makers to become a kind of facilitators, as kind of mediators of a collective intelligence that really exists within a long-term commitment, institutional openness, or a trust building as a core of a process. Thank you.
Thank you, Bahar. Your response actually echoed also Edmore's response. Thank you for highlighting the importance of early engagement of communities and the use of accessible and participatory tool, and the importance of respecting local knowledge system. And also the planner's role shift from design to coordination. Thank you. Is there any immediate question for these two speakers regarding question 3? If
Yes,
not,
maybe.
we'll... Yeah,
Yes,
so
sorry.
Elizabeth, please.
Yeah. Sorry, Wantubaha, the local knowledge system you mentioned, does that have other words? Or if you would say local knowledge system, do people know immediately what that means?
I was more highlighting the issue of this indigenous cultural knowledge that really exists within the people that they developed during to respond to the challenges. So this knowledge, I think, in my opinion, it's very much overlooked knowledge. So when we come as an expert, when we come as a planners, we don't look for what it exists, what actually the people, what they adopt, what are the tools, what are the methods, the indigenous, this kind of local methods that was developed based on a need. It sometimes could be like a spontaneously happening. So we are kind of overlooking all these aspects, and then we are moving beyond to sit behind the table and start discussing over maps. We start discussing over initiatives while we are actually not giving a space for us as an expert to understand what is really exist. So this is perhaps my answer to your question.
Thank you.
Maybe in that regard, I can ask both speakers, Bahar and Edmore. When you talk about indigenous knowledge or local knowledge, do you have perhaps a concrete example that to show how indigenous knowledge we can learn from in your experience in projects?
We start with Admor or with me or
Or
whatever.
yeah, whoever.
It's fine. I can start. An example is again, when you're talking about flooding, right? Normally you would want to use technology, flood simulation, all right? But in the absence of this technology, there are communities which already live there. They can tell you that, okay, when there's excess rainfall, this part of the community, actually water can rise to this level, or these houses here, where this structure is, or this area is flooded. So you can easily map that and maybe avoid developing in this. In your mapping, you can actually avoid. But where did you get this information from? From the people. Right. So this is the local knowledge which you might not have as an expert as you move into these communities, but they have that information. So they can give you that information before you even deploy technology, flood simulation technology through your geographical information system. You cannot, you can literally use that information and maybe correlate it with now some of the information which you can, some of the data which you can now maybe find online or from institutional databases. But this can actually help you to sort of with assurance, like what you have here as an expert and what's on the ground is actually is the same. But the most important point here is that the community can actually help you to sort of justify, or the plans which you justify or not, the plans which you're actually trying to implement in this community. So that's an example of how knowledge system can actually, indigenous knowledge system can be utilized in planning. Thank you.
Okay, I would. Can I continue taking from Admor?
Yeah, please. Thank you.
Okay, all right. So basically, few examples that I have learned from my site visits to a coastal informal settlement, which is located in the southern suburb of Beirut. And as far as the core of our discussion is that this local adaptation strategies, before that it exists before us as a planners, as we are expert arriving to the site, starting the discussion, start the understanding with our tools and with our actually estimations for the process. So basically, we could speak in a very simple example about this, like coastal or flood-prone areas. that I have seen, for example, this floating structures that is actually raising these houses, and they kind of develop it from the gum of the wheels, or it could be also from wooden structure, from blocks, or different solutions that already exist. That I'm not saying it is the best solution, but this solution, it was born from the local knowledge based on that need. So perhaps we can take from there and then begin the discussion in a level that it could be at the professional level. But there is also different aspect, not just this is an example, but it could be also the community kind of having this seasonal mobility patterns as well, or also in a specific places we see that there is really they build a kind of natural buffer zones that like mangroves or whatever. So this is kind of initiatives for us as a planners. We see it, okay, this is natural based solutions, we put it in that context, in that professional context. Or if we also could speak about the hot climate aspect, so we see that I have seen with my own eyes that there is this how the narrow streets are being actually treated. Again, speaking in informal settlements, how the shading they kind of created by using kind of tents, by using kind of thresholds that can create a shadow, how they treat the courtyards. Um, I mean, it could be also about this natural ventilation techniques that they use also inside with the local knowledge that they use inside their apartment, their houses, their blocks. And this is, we call it, this is okay. We are thinking about this like passive design approach, but it already exists in a way. So we need to start from somewhere. Or if we speak about this water scarcity in some regions, we see also that some of the communities they develop some techniques exactly specifically, and then I have seen it also with my own eyes in Latin America, in Medellin, Colombia. So there is this rainwater harvesting which is actually exist on the roof, on the terraces. There is the soil moisture retention as well that also exists with as a solution by the community. So I think this is a kind of a key issues that today we need to focus on, to again, as we are criticizing the approach, a top-down approach, and we are against top-down approach in planning, in the planning world, and then we are starting from this bottom up. We are starting from little sparks that exist in the local places. I think we need to appreciate that knowledge very much as a starting point, as a pilot project, and we need to take it into the professional level. But also, what I would like to say that these kind of initiatives for us as a planners, it can build more trust between us and local communities. It can build more confident to be accepted, because sometimes we could be also perceived as an intruders, not as an a part of this community that we have a good intention to make to develop it, or to have an actually a transformation initiative. So I would end with that few examples. Thank you.
Thank you, Edmore. Thank you, Bahar, for giving concrete examples on local knowledges. We now move to the fourth question, our last question, which is on catalyzing transformational change. So if you were to identify one critical shift across policy, planning systems, or institutional culture that could accelerate both climate resilience and inclusive urban development, what would it be, and why is it pivotal? We start with you, Edmore.
Okay. No, thank you once again. I think in terms of transformational change, catalyzing transformational change, I think we should start at actually centering vulnerable communities. For every government decisions, we need to center vulnerable community. They need to have a voice, or their voice need to be amplified. Their ideas need to come to the fore. Right, so this is very important. When we center the vulnerable, we are actually planning for everyone. We have a mantra in my institution, inclusive cities, where when we say if we plan for the most vulnerable communities in the city, we are actually planning for everyone, right? Because now everyone else will be comfortable. If we make sure that the most vulnerable communities are involved, then clearly even those who are not vulnerable can feel even more comfortable, in this in our urban environment, right? So it's important. It's quite important that moving forward, we need to center vulnerable communities in our designs, in our policies, and and actually being intentional about it. Right, so that's number one. The second thing which I see is sort of cross-sectoral planning, right? So cities, they're complex, complex organisms, right? So where each and every party has to move for this whole thing to actually function, for this whole organism to function. Every party has to be, well-oiled, it has to move. So we cannot now, plan or operate in silos. There's need for cross-sectoral planning where different sectors need to come together, where if you have Department of, environment, Department of Planning, engineering department, everyone, or even the social departments which deals with the social development, they have to come. Housing development, they have to come, to the center. Each and every contribution is important. So there's need to now move everything, and so that all the contribution are actually at the center, right? Where as opposed to say, okay, this is a planning issue. Okay, they're dealing with issues to do with it's a disaster. Therefore, the department which deals with disaster management has to focus on it. No, everyone has to come to the fore because all these departments are actually interlinked. As you move, you see that all these departments are interlinked. So that's what I can say. Those two things. We need to move into center vulnerable communities, center them in decision making, as well as cross-sectoral planning. It's quite important as we move forward, and we have to be intentional about it, not just as a decoration in our documents, but it has to be intentional and be implemented. Right. Thank you.
Thank you, Edmore, for highlighting two critical shifts you identified. One is center vulnerable communities, and the second is integrated approach of planning instead of planning in silos. Thank you. So finally, Dr. Baha, what about your thoughts?
All right. So I think there is a critical shift that could that could most effective accelerate both the climate resilience and the inclusive urban development is then again building on what Admir said. So there is this repositioning of planning as a binding integrator of climate equitable and investment decisions rather than a coordinating or advisory function alongside them. So from a planner perspective, one of the persistent challenges today is that the climate strategies, the social policies, and spatial plans often exist in a parallel system. So I think planners may produce resilience framework or inclusive strategies, but the actual decisions on a land use and infrastructure and investment are still frequently driven by the sectorial priorities or short-term economic considerations. So I think it is also, again, this is create a gap between planning knowledge and planning implementation. And the turning point, therefore, is to make the climate resilience and the social equity core is a core regulatory and evaluative criteria within the planning system itself. So embedded in statutory plans, development control, infrastructure programming, and public investment appraisals. So in another word, I would say that planning becomes the mechanism that filter and shape development decision through both climate and justice lenses, rather than simply responding to them after the fact. So it's not responding, it's a core from the whole process. So from practical planning lens, I think this would mean that every spatial decision, whether it's transporting or a transport corridor or a housing development or urban regeneration project, is assessed not only for the compliance with the land use regulatory or economic viability, but also for the long-term impact on vulnerability, emissions, access to services, the distribution of the benefits. So this shifts planning from a reactive approval system, in my opinion, to a proactive climate and equity-driven governance tool. So it also, I think, this kind of process or this kind of an approach, it also require a deeper institutional transformations. So planners would need to operate with the cross sectorial government structure, as Admor actually mentioned, where planning is not isolated by directly linked to environment, housing, infrastructure, and financial department through a shared performance indicators and accountability framework. So basically, this strengthened the role of planning as a mediator between the technical knowledge, the political priorities, and the community need at the same time. I think I would say ultimately from a planning perspective, the real transformation happen when climate resilience and inclusion are not longer treated as a thematic objectives, but become built-in condition that define what is permitted, what is actually fundable and desirable in any project on any urban development. I will end that with this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bahar. Thank you for highlighting the role of planning, repositioning planning as a binding mechanism from reactive to proactive approach. So it's not only about changing of approach or a mechanism, it's about really a paradigm shift. Thank you. So
Thank you.
we are so we are now towards the end of the discussion, and we move to the Q&A session. We don't have so many minutes left, but still, I would like to allow a few questions if there are any.
Dr. Lee, I see there's a question from Pakama Masuku. Can you ask him to put that question on audio, please? Maybe.
Yes, please. Can you turn on your micro and ask Masako?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Pakamani Masuku. I'm in Durban, South Africa. I noted what Dr. Edmore was highlighting, and it's an important challenge, a challenge that is also observed here in South Africa. And what another challenge that is observed in South Africa is that the affluent communities and white and affluent communities seem to be more prioritized in terms of green infrastructure planning. And this leaves poor communities and those that are disadvantaged outside of urban planning. This is termed green apartheid. I don't know whether this term is official, but they are calling it, others call it it's green apartheid, where affluent and white people are prioritized in urban planning, while poor and disadvantaged communities, including informal settlement dwellers, leaving them outside of planning. So my question was, are there any observations like this outside of South Africa? Maybe this is not our problems only in South Africa or including the global South, but maybe it's a problem for the global community. Maybe it's observed in the global North. Thank you.
So, Dr. Dr. Edmore, can you respond this question?
Okay, so maybe this best suit think Dr. Baha here, because if I understand the question very well, you want to understand whether the issue of what you call green apartheid is also a phenomenon outside Africa or in the global north.
Yes. Yes.
That's how I understood the question. Yes. I can't say I have much experience from the global north, but I would like to assume it is the same. Obviously, the affluent communities, they tend to be, prioritized as you go through, your readings. You can see that affluent communities are most likely to be prioritized far as development is concerned. So, but I would leave this to Dr. Baha to sort of give us his input with his experience from Poland, I guess. Yeah, is this something which is common?
I think I haven't. I honestly, frankly speaking, I haven't encountered such an issue. As I also work with the local authorities here in Gdansk. I'm located in Gdansk, working with the municipality. I think this haven't been a kind of a crucial issue or something that has been considered strictly. So that's why I was a bit in a limbo with the answer, because I mean, in terms of the participation, in terms of the involvement of the communities, and also in Poland, and specifically in Gdansk, from my experience as a practitioner also here, we don't have the terminology or the term of informal settlements, or we have this term of disadvantage and poor communities. Of course, there is kind of marginalized neighborhood that actually is lacking a bit of facilities, but it's not the main facility. So the topic is a bit not comparable, because again, it's a kind of a different context. It's a different context, different challenges, different issues that is occur in south of south of Africa. So I think I would keep it maybe for someone else. I see that the president Elizabeth, she raised a hand, so maybe she could contribute to the answer, or also share some experience from Europe. Please, Elizabeth, I hand it to you.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, maybe just some reflections here. As I've worked in different contexts in the world, in Asia and also Latin America, for instance, that the issue of security of tenure is quite an important one. It means if you're not on the map, and it has a bit to do with data, which was discussed in the beginning here. If you're not on the map, or you're invisible to the city because you live in informal settlement or favelas, or it has different names across the world, you miss a lot of access. And I know it more of access to, for instance, health. The moment you are identified and you become on the map, it also means you can open access to social services, to health services, etc. So that has probably could have something to do with this as well, that such a large portion still remains invisible for the formal planning structures. That's one thing. And then from working in the global north, there are cities that, for instance, prioritize in their urban overall city planning, that really want more equal access also to green infrastructure. And they focus on vulnerable areas, low social income often. It often overlaps also with less presence of green, more heat islands, etc. What happens then, that's of course another big discussion, is when cities do an intentional policy measures, for instance, to improve the situation in vulnerable areas and poor neighborhoods, etc., is that these neighborhoods often become more attractive for everyone. And if you don't look at the bigger picture, or there is no policy, for instance, to keep affordable housing in those areas, what then happens is you get gentrification. So the initial population cannot afford to stay there anymore because the neighborhood becomes more attractive. And so it actually also misses the goal of delivering services to our, the vulnerable neighborhoods or poorer neighborhoods. But that's by itself is a big discussion. Yeah.
Thank you, Elizabeth, and thank you, the other two speakers. So with that discussion, we close the Q&A session. As we come to the end of the session, I would like to invite Professor Hope to share her reflections and closing remarks. So Professor Hope, over to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lee and Madam President Elizabeth for joining us this afternoon. It's about 13:30 in South Africa. I know for other colleagues it's different time zone, but thank you so much for making time. I think we had very good input from our speakers, our YPP. Obviously, they've been YPP in the past, and I think they still qualify to be YPs. Yeah, one more year, one more year. Yeah, so thank you so much. I think you raised very important issues, and there was a lot of synergies across. Issues around informality, it came out very strongly from Edmo, and advocating for the voices of the people living in the informal settlement to make sure that we become inclusive in our approach. And that's what we always advocated for. What I find it very particularly interesting is the emergent kind of the divergent and emerging of ideas from both speakers. And I was wondering whether you were in touch with one another when putting your notes together, because you both raised issues around participation, but also data availabilities, technology, and you were very heavy on indigenous knowledge, that we need to borrow from indigenous knowledge. And the issue around implementation, Baha, you were very strong on that perhaps what we're struggling with is not plans as they were, is about how do we implement our plans. You go as far as to try to alert us about the SDGs, to say, what are the mechanisms to implement that, or the strategies to make sure that we implement the SDGs. And I remember Lee also come on board and said, yeah, we now have strategy on the localization, because this is the interesting part about it, because you're talking with someone who's dealing with some of those SDGs on a daily basis. But I thought that was very interesting. The remarks from the president when she weigh in and start talking about how many informal settlement do we have, 1 billion, and why this is important. And I know ISOCOP, we are also starting to look at these issues going forward. What I want to try to do is to try to give a summary of what you have said, because the intention, therefore, why we're having these seminars is that we're going to have a publication. So the speakers who presented today, they will put this in a chapter format, and this will form part of what I'm putting together with the team, the ISOCOP board members, as a publication for the YP. So you will read more about this. So I won't try to summarize that. But what's coming up, I just want to I let colleagues stay online and make sure that you keep on checking our, I'm not talking about online here, but keep checking our LinkedIn or social medias. We'll be releasing, two things will happen. One, we'll be releasing a call for impact stories for all our former YPPs to send us some video clips, and we'll profile your work on our social medias. Please do respond to that on as the call get to be released. And this will be after, will be somewhere around June. And then obviously this presentations and many more which are coming will form part of the publication. You will also hear Lee's view on that publication around the issues that we are raising. We'll be having the next seminar, which I'm hoping all of you will also show up like you did today, somewhere around June. We are going to have 4, and each is going to be quarterly. And this is the first one, and we're going to have our next one soon. We already secure about 2 speakers. And if you are keen and interested in being a speaker and you've been a YP before, please drop me a line or be in LinkedIn or whichever way. But with all those words, Lee, I don't want to take more time. I just want to thank you for facilitating this and thank our speakers. Thanks, Elizabeth, for showing up. And thank you so much for all our attendees. This wouldn't be possible without all of you. We really appreciate. And I sign out and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you, Hope, and thank you for your reflections and for your announcements. And I also, from my side, thank all of our speakers for your valuable contributions. And thank you, Elizabeth, for being with us the whole session. And also thank Hope, for the director of YPP, for organizing this webinar and making today's exchange possible. We warmly invite you to stay connected with the YPP community and to learn more about ongoing opportunities, activities, and initiatives. Thank you once again, and we look forward to continue this conversation in the future. And next, let's take this forward. Bye for now.